my name is Shelly and welcome to my channel, Shell Space. This is a bit late. I haven't had time to film, so we are now doing my March. Is it March? Yeah, March wrap up. I don't even know what day it is. Today is the solar eclipse in North America, and my kids are home because for some reason the schools decided to close for today. Anyways, we are here, they are home, they're playing video games now, so if you hear yelling and screaming, just know that it's them having fun. It's happy screams. You know, I was kind of disappointed in myself because I didn't think that I read that much, but I did because they're quite chunky, and I spent a lot of time watching a lot of TV and stuff like that, so I didn't read as much as I want to, but you know what? 4 books is still pretty freaking amazing. So we'll start with the first book that I finished in March, and that is Gods of Men by Barbara Kloss. So this is a self-pub romantic fantasy, and it's actually a reread. I think I read this in 2019. It was a long time ago. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but it was. I literally remember nothing. I own the entire trilogy. They're right there. I'm like, you know what? I have them all, so I should just read them all. So I had to reread it. I finished it, and I don't remember what it's about. I know what it's about, but I don't remember much about it even after finishing it twice. That doesn't sound very good. I enjoyed my read of this, but it was an okay read. And I have so much to read here that I can't fixate on okay reads. So I'm unsure if I'm going to be continuing on with this series, but let's talk about what it's about. This is about a young woman named Sable. And in this world, magic is forbidden, and Sable has magic. And something happens, and she is basically on the run, and she runs away from her kingdom and hides in this almost like wild area in the south where bad people hang out. It's kind of like the Wild West where everybody would just the bad ruffians went, and that's where they hid. And she's hiding in this wild area and working as a healer. So she's learning how to heal with herbs and medicine, and also her special ability that she's not supposed to talk about. Fast forward, she's a teenager or a young woman now. Her life gets turned upside down when a young, I would say he's like a bounty hunter, a guy that hunts people with magic, comes into her village. Of course, he's a young, handsome guy, and stuff happens, and they find themselves intertwined in their lives, and they kind of learn to see things from the other person's perspective. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the character work, and I found that the couple in this were you actually saw why they like each other. You saw them develop from this hate to love. That was really well done. But even after finishing it twice, I don't remember much about the story. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. I think I may continue on just because I do own the books. Honestly, it was a good read. It was a fun read. It was accessible. It was bingeable. It was a fun read. But it won't end up on my top favorites at all. I still recommend it for people who do enjoy kind of like romance fantasy, but a little less on the romance side, more like a fantasy side. The thing I always compare it to is City of Brass. That sort of feel, where there is romance in it, but it's more about the character and discovering her power and the world that's it's a horrible world, basically, and navigating this horrible world with also the romantic elements. If you're looking for something like that, I highly recommend this book. It's a trilogy, and they're fairly short. So I think I gave this 3.5. It's a pretty good read. I mean, solid read. Okay, so the next book I finished was probably my favorite of the month, and that is Darkwater Daughter by H.M. Long. I love this book. Oh my god, I had such a blast reading this book. This book was everything that I look forward to in books. And it was like Pirates of the Caribbean mixed with a whole bunch of other things, and I loved it. It was so much fun. It was so much fun. I loved the magic system. I loved the different creatures that the author created. She created her own creatures, and I freaking loved them. The reveals at the end were shocking, and it was just so good, and I had such a fun time with it. And it is advertised as a romantic fantasy, and there is some romance in it, but honestly, it is not a part of it. It's about the story, and the characters are doing their own thing, and yes, they do collide, but it is so much more than that. And I am so looking forward to the sequel coming out this summer. I've already pre-ordered it, and I'm going to be reading it. So what is this about? So this is about Mary, and she is a storm singer, and basically storm singers can do what essentially it sounds like. They can sing to storms, and it is very beneficial to have a storm singer on your ship to help you navigate through like bad weather or good weather. And also storm singers can kind of be as like a weapon as well. So if you're like, there's like a Navy fleet or like pirates attacking you, you can call down a storm and wipe them out. So they're very beneficial to have. Unfortunately, majority of them are slaves and are kind of considered like tools and weapons and not like people. So Mary's a storm singer, and she lived a very secluded life until something happens and her life gets torn up, and she finds herself being like a tool of this basically war between like the pirates and the like Navy forces and the kingdom. So she finds herself torn between this war, and she just honestly, all she has one thing in mind, and that is to find her mother and bring her mother back home, and that's all she wants to do. So if you're looking for something like that's like fun, kind of gives you the Pirates of the Caribbean feel, like the first movie, especially the first movie, I highly recommend this. I loved it, and it's pretty short, so it's pretty accessible, so I really recommend people to check this out because I feel like it's not talked about enough. So I'm going to be screaming about it. So obviously, this was 5 stars. I can't remember which book I finished first, but I'll start with the one that I started first. So that is The Wall of Storms by Ken Liu. I actually started this, I think, in February. I'll have to double check that. It took me an entire month to read this book. It is just because it's so big. And I had to listen to the audiobook, and there was so much to this world, like so much to this world that is just, it's dense, I finished this weeks ago, and I'm still stuttering to figure out how to explain my feelings for this book and how absolutely brilliant this author is and everything I love about it. I actually have a vlog that will probably come up before this, so you can check that out. I'll link it below, and I talk about it a little bit more in depth there. But essentially, I loved this book. Obviously, it was 5 stars. Like, I cannot rate a Ken Liu book less than 5 stars now. Like, it's just not possible. He's just such a magical writer, and he is so brilliant, and his world building is brilliant. His character work is amazing. Everything about it. But there's a huge but. It is a lot. And at times, it reads very much like a documentary or history book. So I can understand why a lot of people would be turned off by that. At times, I was also turned off by it. It was a lot of information, like a lot of information. So I did find that I was getting bored at some points, and some points dragged, but some points I couldn't get enough of it. So it is a big book. It is a task, and it's a lot, but I guarantee that it's so worth it. It is worth it in the end, and I will definitely be continuing on the series, but because it was so dense, I think I want to give myself a little bit of space and maybe pick up the Veiled Throne. I was planning to pick it up in May, but I think I might pick it up in June. It is like everybody's favorite for a reason. It is that good. Obviously, I gave this 5 stars because I could not give it 5 stars. So it took me a month, but it was so worth it in the end. So worth it. This book also took me a month, and it's not because how dense it was because it wasn't the right genre for me at the time. At the time, I was very much feeling romantic fantasy. It's not a romantic fantasy. In fact, it's more like a revenge fantasy, and that is The Blade of Faith by David Dalglish. So this book, I was really excited to read. And the reason being is because the way that it was described was like the magic system is based on gods, and the way that it is dealt with is like you take these gods into yourselves and use their essence to have magic, very much like Final Fantasy. And Final Fantasy X especially is one of my favorite games of all time. So I was extremely drawn to this because of that. And that part was done so well, like so well. The descriptions of the gods, the magic system, the way that it happened, it was done incredibly well. Unfortunately, the actual plot and the characters fell flat for me. I really didn't care what happened to these characters. I really didn't care about the plot. And if I'm only reading for just the gods and the magic system, I could just might as well just go play Final Fantasy X again. So this book is about a young prince named Cyrus, and something happens and he has basically lost his kingdom, and he is now pretty much like a I don't want to say like a hostage of war, but he's a prisoner of war now to the enemies that came over and took his kingdom over. Because this kingdom has gone around taking all these kingdoms and basically making it like a giant empire, right? That's what they do. They consume other kingdoms and make it a giant one empire. So there is this building of a revolution happening on the small little island kingdom which Cyrus is from. And Cyrus gets involved with this rebellion to basically take revenge and take over his kingdom from this like empire. It's basically a story about revenge and a rebellion, which is usually, like, I love me a good rebellion story against an empire, but the way that it was done, it really lost me. The first, like, I would say probably about 150 pages is essentially like a training montage, and then the rest of the time is just missions, and yeah, it lost me. So essentially, I think that this story does have an audience. It's just, unfortunately, not me, and it's sad. I really did want to continue on with the series, but if I'm not loving it, I have so many other books to read from, so I think I might actually just DNF this series. And it's so silly because, like, I feel like since I've become part of Booktube years ago, and then even when I started making my channel, that the idea of DNFing a series was like, it was unheard of. Like, you don't DNF series. You got to keep reading because everybody else is talking about it. But like before, I had no problem just picking up a book, and if I didn't like it, I would just completely forget about it. So I don't know why it's in my head now that if I start a series, I need to finish a series even if I don't like it. The only time I don't do that is if I actually genuinely DNF the book and I don't finish the book. But so yeah, I think I might DNF the series and just call it a day, but it's unfortunate. I did give this, I think, 3.5 stars because it was well written. It's just not a story that I want to continue on with, unfortunately. Alright, so that was my March wrap-up. I mean, there wasn't a lot of books, but some of the books were pretty thick and hefty, and overall my enjoyment was pretty good. I had 2 5 stars. Oh, I'm holding 4 fingers. I had 2 5 stars, which is amazing. Like, having 2 5 stars in 1 month is pretty impressive, so I'm pretty happy about that. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!